The Janitor's Gamble in the modest town of Forestdale, Arkansas, where the air smells like rain on hot pavement and stories cling to the rusted walls of old buildings, there sat a small, aging auto shop, Goodwin's Auto Repair. Wedged between a faded diner and a boarded-up gas station, the shop was easy to miss. But to the locals, it was a cornerstone of the town, as reliable as sunrise, and just as unnoticed. Inside, a crew of young mechanics worked diligently, each proudly certified, each with a specialty: transmissions, diagnostics, turbo systems. But none of them noticed the old man who came in early to sweep the floors, mop the grease, and take out the trash. They called him Hank. Old Hank, the janitor. He didn't say much. He didn't need to. He moved like he belonged, and nobody questioned it. He was background noise, the kind you only notice when it stops. His coveralls were always stained, his boots worn down, and his beard like a foggy memory of better days. On a dreary Tuesday afternoon, as a storm rolled in and thunder grumbled across the sky, a sleek black Bentley Continental GT pulled into the shop's lot. The engine coughed like a chain smoker. The man behind the wheel was clearly out of place in Forestdale. Tailored suit, polished shoes, Bluetooth earpiece blinking. "It's been to 3 shops already," the man snapped, tossing his keys to Goodwin himself. "None of them could fix it. Let's see if your people are any different." The crew gathered, intrigued. They plugged in scanners, ran tests, popped the hood. Hours passed. Coffee cups emptied. Tempers flared. Still, the Bentley remained stubbornly broken. That's when Hank shuffled over, mop in hand. He looked under the hood with quiet confidence, the way a veteran soldier sizes up a battlefield. The crew stared, some with curiosity, others with condescension. "Check the secondary timing chain," he said softly. "Sounds like it slipped a tooth." Laughter. "We already scanned it. There's no fault code for that," one mechanic said, rolling his eyes. But Goodwin, the owner, paused. He'd been in the business long enough to know that experience often whispered while arrogance shouted. "Do it," he said. And they did. Sure enough, buried beneath layers of metal and electronics, the secondary chain had slipped. The diagnostics hadn't caught it, but Hank did. The Bentley roared back to life. Silence fell across the shop. The suited man stood stunned. The mechanics stood humbled. And Hank. He went back to mopping, like nothing had happened. But something had. Word spread fast in towns like Forestdale. By the end of the week, locals were stopping by not for oil changes, but to catch a glimpse of the janitor who had outsmarted modern diagnostics. By the end of the month, a local news crew came by, then regional press, then national blogs. Hank Wilson became a name people Googled. As reporters dug deeper, a story began to emerge. Decades ago, Hank was an elite automotive engineer in Detroit. He helped design some of the most reliable engines of the 1980s. He was brilliant, precise, methodical, respected. He had a family, a wife named Clara, a daughter named Rosie. Then, one icy night, tragedy struck. A car accident took them both, and Hank, shattered by grief, walked away from it all. From the blueprints, from the accolades, from the world. He moved south, took odd jobs, kept his head down. Eventually, he found himself in Forestdale, sweeping floors at a place that smelled like his past, but asked no questions. But machines don't forget. Neither did Hank. The Bentley incident was just the beginning. After the news story went viral, young mechanics from nearby towns started visiting. They didn't come to fix cars, they came to learn. Hank didn't advertise, didn't charge. He just talked, taught, showed them how to feel an engine's rhythm like a heartbeat, how to diagnose with ears and instinct. One kid, Tyler, a high school dropout, called Hank a car whisperer. He started spending afternoons at the shop following Hank around with a notebook. Months later, Tyler got a scholarship to a tech institute. A documentary crew from Chicago arrived. They filmed Hank over several weeks, capturing his quiet wisdom, his unspoken pain, and his slow, steady return to purpose. The computer's a tool, but your senses are your soul. Listen to the rattle, the hesitation, the stutter. The car's telling you a story. You just need to understand its language. By winter, Hank had unknowingly built a mentorship circle. Goodwin gave him his own corner in the shop, a stool, a whiteboard, and a plaque that read, "The Engine Sage." But fame never changed Hank. He still mopped, still arrived before dawn, still worked with his back bent and eyes alert. One night, after everyone had gone home, he sat beside the Bentley, the one that started it all. He ran his hand across the hood and whispered, "Thank you." Not for the attention, but for the spark it rekindled inside him. In a world that chases the loudest voice, sometimes it's the quiet man in the corner who holds the truth. And sometimes, to find your way back, all it takes is one broken engine. But what no one saw, not the reporters, not the mechanics, not even Goodwin, was what happened when Hank was alone. When the tools were silent and the last engine shut down, Hank would often retreat to a small room in the back of the shop. It was once a storage closet. Now it was his sanctuary. The walls were lined with old automotive manuals from the 60s and 70s, diagrams hand-sketched on yellowing paper, Polaroid photos of forgotten machines. On a shelf sat a framed photograph, Clara holding Rosie, both smiling under the Detroit sun. Each night, Hank would sit in a creaky chair, open a worn leather notebook, and write. Not technical notes, not blueprints, but letters. Letters to Clara, to Rosie. He wrote about the engines he worked on, the kids he mentored, the way the shop smelled on rainy mornings, the small victories, the quiet loneliness, the guilt. Hank, voiceover gentle and cracked. Clara, Rosie. Today, a boy named Tyler rebuilt a carburetor with nothing but his hands and intuition. You would have loved the look in his eyes. It reminded me of mine before the silence. These letters never left the room, but they kept Hank going. And sometimes when the pain rose like steam in his chest, he'd reach into a small tin box and pull out a harmonica, the same one he used to play lullabies with when Rosie couldn't sleep. He'd sit by the open door, the Arkansas night breeze drifting in, and play. Soft, bluesy notes that told stories no words ever could. Hank's world was not just nuts and bolts. It was memory, love, regret, redemption. He wasn't rebuilding engines. He was rebuilding himself. And though the world now saw him as a miracle mechanic, in Hank's eyes, he was simply a man trying to make peace with the ghosts of yesterday. One spring morning, the shop door creaked open earlier than usual. A girl no older than 17 stepped inside. Her clothes were dusty, a backpack slung over one shoulder, and her eyes carried the weight of someone who had seen too much too young. Her name was Ellie. She'd run away from a foster home 2 states over. No plan, no money, just a name, Hank Wilson. She'd seen a video of him talking about engines, and something about the way he spoke made her believe he might understand her silence. Hank didn't ask questions. He pointed to a broom and said, Start with the floor. Weeks passed, then months. She swept. She watched. She listened. And slowly, Hank taught her how to listen to engines, how to fix what others overlooked, how to trust her instincts, but most importantly, how to forgive herself. One evening, Ellie found the letters. She didn't read them, just sat beside Hank, holding a socket wrench in one hand and a tear in the other. She didn't need words, and neither did he. Years later, when Hank finally closed his eyes for the last time, Ellie inherited the shop. She renamed it Wilson and Daughters Auto. Above the entrance, etched in steel, a quote, "The quiet ones build legacies." And inside, among the tools and grease and grit, she still keeps the harmonica. Every now and then, she plays, just like Hank did.